We're here. We're here.
All
CCO
right, CO, CO.
Wahde, Agalisga, Choog, Wadong.
Agalisga, don't. That's just my first name as well.
Yeah, my English name is Ryan Mackey, but I usually go by Wad or Wahde, and so it's good to be here. It's good to talk to you guys about different community leadership models. This morning, we want to start it off with our way of opening. I think we're going to sing a song. Those we just left the game.
I ain't that door at least.
How on? All right. This is well, it's Saw you walk or Nagi High.
At least saw you are.
How on? Saw you walk. Saw talk jump.
Ayana do elanikan, negayes tani gadu eladan. Ayana do elanikan, gaya do eladan. Ayana do elanikan, gawalo sahe awadanto. Ayana do elanikan, gawade yona he awadanto. Gaya do eladan.
How on? I don't. Well, we've all grown up in a community somewhere, and where we grew up is going to influence how we look at our values, our behaviors, our beliefs, and put them in a different perspective depending on our worldview. We all have a common denominator of having English as our primary language at this point, but older generations, if they were lucky and they grew up in the core part of the Cherokee Nation, they also have a lot of Cherokee in their background, and that's definitely influenced their way of thinking. We live in Tahlequah, and Choog spends half of his time with his mom, Donnie, in Leech. But their home community is Kenwood. And my grandpa used to live there, but most of my family is from Oaks. I didn't grow up in Kenwood or Oaks. I grew up north of Tulsa, in a little town called Copan, where most of my dad's family lives. And so that's influenced me. And I was lucky to grow up around Cherokees. There were speakers in my family, Cherokee speakers. And when I was young, I heard it, but I didn't really understand what it meant to be a Cherokee, because even up there, I was surrounded by other Cherokees. Not all of them had a strong cultural background or a strong Cherokee family connection, but they were proud to be Cherokees, like people all across the United States. I'm sure that not only could they trace their lineage to a Cherokee ancestor, they had several aspects of that original Cherokee culture trickle down into their lives. I think that one of the things that we have to realize is that even if we didn't grow up in the heart of one of our traditional communities here in the Cherokee Nation, we are still inheritors of these cultural values, these teachings that have been passed down to us. A lot of times it's unconscious. When our families had to assimilate to mainstream society, at least for jobs, for financial reasons, they couldn't help but take their Cherokeeness with them. And even though they tried to learn new ways and adapt, they were doing it from a Cherokee perspective. So those things have lasted. When I went off to school, I realized how Cherokee I was. And so when I was done, I came back. I came home and I settled in the heart of the Cherokee Nation, 5 counties, where most of our Cherokee speakers live, where our highest population of Cherokees are. Cherokee County, Delaware County, Mays County, Adair County, and Sequoia County. That's where the highest per capita Cherokee populations are, specifically Adair County. Now, Agalisga and I, our families are from up north, but we've learned things from all across the Cherokee Nation. Now I told a little bit about myself. Nina, hi, Lewis, you want to hear?
Yeah. Well, I've always been around this area. I've never, in Tahlequah and Kenwood. I mostly grew up in Kenwood in the younger part of my life for the first 3 years, and When I was 3, I moved here to Tahlequah, where I currently reside most of the time, to learn Cherokee at the immersion school, the Cherokee Language Immersion Charter School. I think that's what its full title is. And I've done that ever since I was 3, and I moved on up into Sequoia, where I'm a senior now. I still have a lot to do, as you can tell, because I'm only 17, and I'm still not fully an adult yet, and I'm still in high school. So most of my family's from Kenwood and Copan as well, but I have a lot of family throughout now. A lot of family has spread throughout the different counties here, some in Keys and some in Oaks and Kenwood and Pryor, just everywhere. But I could probably go to just about every town in Oklahoma and find someone I'm related to, which is always something that I will appreciate. But that's pretty much it for me, I reckon.
We don't. Yeah, Agalisga, a lot of times we call him Choog. He's young. And Choog means boy in Cherokee, if you didn't know. Most of you, I'm sure, do. But he's not really a boy anymore. From our traditional, perspective, he's Aweenuj, which is, kind of on the cusp of adulthood. We might call him a young adult in English. But the Cherokee language really informs the way that we look at things. When we categorize things in our head, the way that we interpret things, how words are associated with each other, they're different. They're different in Cherokee. They're associated differently in Cherokee. And so I bring that up to also point out that even though he's young, he's taken on a leadership position in our traditional community. We have a ceremonial ground. They call them stomp grounds, cultural grounds, up there just a little bit west of Kenwood. And ever since he was a young man, or a young boy, really, I believe 4 years old, he's actually started taking on some of those leadership positions. And he's a little bit young. At some point, he's probably going to move away. And when he comes back, he'll be more suited to be ready to settle down and carry on responsibilities. But we don't want to lay too much on him at a young age. Despite that, he's stepped up and he's taken on leadership abilities. I've been a part of nonprofit organizations. I've had administrative positions in the Cherokee Nation. I helped start a Cherokee Language Master Apprentice Program, that's what we call it. And he's been involved in all of that. And he never hesitated to jump to and really step up and assist in any way possible. We could be at large meetings and he would pass out flyers and surveys. He would serve elders. He would give drinks. The thing is, he's learned about servant leadership from being a servant. And traditionally, all of our young people, that's what they did. They took care of their elders. And our elders took care of our young people. Parents, it was our job to provide. If you think about how our ancestors lived in those old communities, the mothers and the dads, the aunts and the uncles, which we called second mothers and second fathers, they were living in a way where they had to provide daily subsistence. And they didn't always have time to spend every waking moment with the elders or with the children. So a lot of times they took care of each other. There was a support system. Everybody had a mom, and everybody was a mom. Even if you hadn't given birth to a child, you were still a mother to your sister's children. Even if you didn't have a sister, you had first cousins, and those were your sisters too, your sisters and your brothers. So this kinship system allowed for a lot of relationships. And our traditional pattern is about relationships. And so you'll hear people being pulled into leadership positions because of who they're related to or that sort of relationship that they have. And poor Agalisga got pulled into the servant process at a very early age because of his relationship with me and his mother. Do you want to add anything about that? I know that you probably have some memories.
Yeah, well, I grew up at a ceremonial stomp ground. The first songs I heard were of ceremonial power like that, stomp dances and animal dances and sacred songs that we still try to carry out to this day. I heard those growing up, and I always wanted to participate because I knew no one else is going to unless you do it first. You can't rely on others to get done what you need to get done. That's something that that's something that I'm still learning in today's world. But it's a hard lesson. It really is a hard lesson to learn because it's not something that you want to hear, and it's not something that you're expected to hear. But you really need to get it done yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. And I started learning that from a young age that I was really the only one that, out of the kids that went there, that was really, really into it.
You had to be there all the time.
I had to be there all the time, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well. There was only a few occasions when I was little that I didn't go to our dances, and I can't really remember the specifics of that. I was probably just being ignorant or something. But I don't think I've missed one in my later age thus far, which I'm really thankful for because they do impact your life once you really get to the understanding of how sacred these are and what they do. Because it's not something that is like, oh, you need to do it because you're told so. No, you need to do it because you need to do it. It's not for other people. And in some ways it is, but it's for you as well. It's not just to do it because someone told you to do it. You should feel like, I need to do this because it helps others and me. It's not just for others, it's for you as well. It helps you. And that's something that I really like to look at people whenever we're all in ceremony and I watch them. The next morning, whenever we get up, as soon as we get there, we go on Fridays, we go on Friday nights, and whoever's there, we'll wake up all at the same time the next morning. And everyone will be pretty foggy because we wake up kind of early, and we don't really like to do that, of course. But
especially when we stay up late talking.
yeah, especially if we stay up till 2 a.m. talking and only get about 3 hours in. But we'll go do some ceremony, and the whole atmosphere will change. The people's personalities. It's because it's not something that they dread. It's something that they look forward to. It's something that they need for themselves. And that's just pretty much our whole ideology and our ceremonies and everything. That's just how it's all set up. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. But no one else is going to do it. I'll tell you what. Well, that's pretty much all I got to say.
Well, he points some things out that are very pertinent. Like I said earlier, he's at this age called Awinuj. And when he was younger, he was Achuj. And those are Dini Yolfling. Anichuj are all Dini Yolfling. All those boys are children. Anigehuj, Anichuj, Nagadi Yolfling. Both boys and girls are children. Our word for child is Ayolfling. And it seems to be related to Ayolflaha, which is to whittle something down. So when they're children, they naturally grow. They are naturally exploring. In fact, when they're really small, it's like suicide watch 24/7. But as they get a little older and they start exploring, they learn so fast. They learn so much. And who they are is just overflowing. And so it's the parents' job to kind of whittle them into into the person they're going to be, not necessarily carve them, more like direct them in the way to go, to help them out. And when they hit this young adult stage where Choog is, they learn to become independent. And one of the first lessons they learn is that if you want something done, you do have to do it yourself. You have to learn how to rely on yourself. And then the young boys, they become Aniween, he'll be Aween. And at that point, they'll be able to survive on their own, and they start taking on leadership roles. And what I mean by that is they become responsible for their families. And eventually, as they grow older, they become responsible for their communities. And when they become elders, they become responsible for a global perspective. So leadership is also tied to responsibility. And at his age, he's learning to become responsible for taking care of what he sees needs to be taken care of, and not having to rely on other people. When he was growing up, he was asked to do things and he would do it, but now he looks around and he says, this needs to happen. Who's going to make this happen? He will. He's the one that makes it happen. And one of the things about being a servant leader is sometimes you don't always have a lot of people to help you do things when you're serving others. And it can be frustrating. So you have to push yourself through it. So there's this spiritual side of things that he mentioned. A change goes over us when we wake up before dawn and we start our ceremonies that Saturday at our dances. And I think that that's the same no matter what sort of spiritual tradition that you follow. We have the Cherokee Baptist Association. We have different Christian Cherokee churches. We have different ceremonial grounds. There are all sorts of different faiths and maybe even secular humanists that are Cherokee. And they all gain their strength from somewhere. For us, we kind of see it as a spiritual thing, but we also acknowledge that it's in each other. It's in our community. So by serving our community, we're serving a greater power. And that's something that I've taken very seriously and learned to value. I'm reading a question and answer. You mentioned leadership role was responsible for family, then community. And I did not get the third point that you made. That was a global responsibility. So our elders think outside of the community. They think outside of the Cherokee Nation or even being Indian, and they think about the world and they take on that level of responsibility. When our young people are first introduced to the world, they can't help but see the world situated within their own perspective. And as we grow, we learn to look at things from other people's perspectives, and we take responsibility for things outside of ourselves. In mainstream society, the pinnacle of success is independence. For us, that's just the first stage of growth in becoming a young adult, independence. Interdependence is much harder to learn, and it has to do with taming down your own desires, taming down your own hard feelings or wishes, and putting those things aside so you can think of something bigger than yourself. And taking care of one another is definitely a challenge. This interdependence is not the same as codependence. But we have to depend on each other. I depended on him even when he was young, and he still depends on me. So there are a lot of different ways to talk about leadership. And as you've noticed, we've kind of focused on our ceremonial traditions. And I want to screen share something with you now, which is something that these words, they've been public for a while, yet not everybody has access to them. These are some of our traditional community teachings. Benny Smith, Agalisga, allowed me to start documenting some of these things. Well, he was documenting them too back in 2009. And I had the luxury and the privilege of spending a lot of time with him and driving him around. He's actually from a different ceremonial ground than us, a different ceremonial community. He grew up at Stokes. Stokes was his father. And his older brother, William Smith, Agalisga, passed away. And Benny didn't take over a direct leadership role at the grounds, but he maintained these value systems, and he took them with him wherever he went. And he was willing to share these philosophical ideals with us. Now in Cherokee, they call them Dikanoa dust, and they'll translate Dikanoa dust as laws, but it really doesn't mean laws. That's why a lot of times we call these community values. But as you see, they're instructions on how to go, on how to live. They call it Diyukta, the way. And these instructions are really about serving one another. And they're said as if you're commanding or strongly suggesting to your audience that people should engage in these behaviors. By engaging in these servant leadership behaviors, we believe that it strengthens ourselves as well as our communities. If you look at leadership from a mainstream society sort of perspective, there's a hierarchy. The big boss is on top, and the people work for the big boss. The ancient feudal system in Europe kind of started this, where the king owned everything. The king, the emperor, however you wanted to look at it, was the sovereign appointed by God, divine right of kings. And so the sovereign owned everyone and everything in God's name. And that including owning the people and the land. Eventually, nobles were granted land by the sovereign, the king, and those nobles owned the land. And in exchange for that, they had to provide military service. So it was a top-down system from the very start in Europe, where our system was never top-down. There was no hierarchy. We did have chiefs, we had leaders, we had beloved elders, beloved women, beloved elder men. But they say that when we came together, we were all equals. So how do you get things done when everybody's equal? I mean, the goal is consensus. I'll admit that. If you can get everybody to agree to something, I think that you're going to have a lot more buy-in. You'll be able to get a lot more things done if people decide to work together. However, in order for that to happen, everybody has to feel like they have a say in the decision. So even our ancestors, they had some level of direct democracy where everybody had a sway, but a lot of times they reported to their families, and their families would send a delegate to negotiate on their behalf. Elder women were so important that they were never expected to go to these council sessions because their representative was supposed to represent them. And if somebody needed to speak to these elder women or elder men, they went themselves to those elders to seek their knowledge, to seek their opinion. And if these representatives did not represent their elders and their families, then they did not maintain their position, because this was not a position of authority. It was a position of responsibility. Before you can have authority over anything, you have to take responsibility for it. And once you're shown to be responsible, people might grant you authority, and you become a leader. The leader is the one up front, the one that gets things done. And if people like the way you do it, they fall in line and they do the same thing. The English made fun of our leaders. They said we had a petticoat government, that we couldn't do anything without women or everybody's permission. And that's true from a certain point of view. But we knew that unless we had buy-in from the real leaders, the ones we represented, those chiefs and council people, whatever decision they made had no strength. It had no merit. Ultimately, they had to engage in one another. They say that you cannot be so far ahead of the people that you lead that you can't reach out and grab them. So, Ditini Dohin is one way to say leader in Cherokee. And that means basically to lead them around. It's the person up front leading them around, almost by hand. And in a lot of our dances, we do that. We take one another by the hand and we lead. We lead them away from the dance area around the arbors and then back again. Sometimes we'll lead them east to the fire and wind up. But this leadership responsibility is directly related to our actions and our choices and people's willingness to follow us. If you do not do something in a way that is so valuable that people choose to follow, you're not leading. If you force people to follow, you're not leading. That's just our traditional perspective. Do you want to have anything to say about that? And yes, we'll send this document out to folks if they want it.
I don't really have too much to add on that, to be honest. It was pretty well covered.
Tell us about some of your leadership experiences, maybe. When I was talking, what images did that talk bring to your mind?
Remind me a lot of you jump into things before we even noticed what was going on, because we would sit around and talk a lot, which is it's an important part to communicate with others and to visit, and it's just such a natural thing to do, of course, in everyday life. Of course you want to talk to people and visit with loved ones they haven't seen in a while, but sometimes there's need for action at that specific moment, and we'll get lost. We'll get caught up in the conversation and forget entirely what we're doing. And I just see Agalisga, my dad, just jump into it and get it all done, and we won't even notice until it's happened, and then we'll get back into our headspace and finish up whatever we can, whatever's left. Just things like that, just being able to, whenever you're a leader, you got to be able to do everyone's job. It's just something that you have to be able to do, because we forget. That's just what we do as people, not as Cherokees or as natives or as anything else, just as people. We forget. That's just something we do. And we do it all the time, or at least I do. I do it probably more times than I could even think of in a day. I forget a lot. But if you're able to have someone there to remind you, and if you just look up every now and then and take a look around, and you'll be able to jump back on the ball. And that's really just what you need, is someone to guide you. But they need to be able to handle it without anyone else as well. So the best part about being in a community that our ancestors had is that, of course, it helped having people there, and it made it a lot stronger as a community, but it wasn't necessary. It just aided a lot, and it was almost expected of you, but nothing's really expected of you. But it is in a certain light as well. It's really...
Let me address that.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So he's kind of brought something up. How do you lead without pushing or pulling? And that's one of these community values. How do you correct people? Our ancestors were careful about how they corrected people, and our elders were too. Some of them still are. They corrected people with stories or with action. They didn't usually directly call people out. They usually didn't tell somebody what to do. Things were not always very, very direct. So how do you inspire people? You get up and do. You get up and do in front of them. Diana Mouse, Agalisga, was somebody that when I was younger, I saw her do a lot of things. And she was able to really, really bring people together. And those people that knew her saw her as a powerhouse. And she left the world a little bit too early. And one time, Donnie asked her, what does it mean to be a Cherokee woman? And she said, I look around and I see what needs to be done and I do it. And I don't complain. I would say that's what it means to be a leader. And if you can inspire people through your action, that's what you do. And there is a value in having expectations, but how you communicate those expectations, that's what's really important. Because even what they'll say around the fire, and at the end of the night, they'll say, if you saw somebody that wanted to be here tonight, that couldn't be here for whatever reason, you look around and they're not here. When you do see them, don't say, where were you? Don't say, I missed you. Just tell them when we're getting together again. So there's the expectation. However, we have no value in guilt. We have no value in shame. Those are not motivational. The best motivation is inherent, and you have to appeal to someone's desires. So you share something with them that motivates them. You share something that inspires them. And if you don't have anything to share, then you have nowhere to take someone. You have nowhere to lead them. If you have a vision, you share your vision, and you show that you're willing to get in there and work on it. And if they pick up this vision and fall in love with the way that you did, then they'll step in. I think the best way to get buy-in is to communicate not just what you want to do, but why you want to do it, and listen to how they respond, because you're not just there to persuade them and get in your way. You're there to try to meet their needs as well. And if you listen to them, not just listen to argue or respond, but listen to them, measure yourself against who they are and what they want, then I think in time, they will see that not only do you care about your vision, but you care about their vision. There's too much room for leaders. Everybody thinks that leadership is a finite thing, that there's just one or two people at the top, and that's not the case. That's a European perspective. Leadership, from our perspective, is bottom up. That word that I said for leader, dida tini don, is dida tini dohin. Each person gets a chance to lead. Each person gets a turn. Our leaders at our ceremonial grounds, they support the participants. They support the members. It's their job to serve the members, and the members serve the guests. And the more leaders you have, the more work gets done. A ceremonial leader works to make sure that each job that needs to be done has a person that is responsible for doing it. And at first, that person doesn't do that job very well. But the more that person does it, the more responsibility they take on, the more skill they develop. And at some point, they have the authority to do this work that was selected for them, that they selected for themselves. And as Choog said earlier, the leader has to know how to do everybody's job. So if they can't be there, that leader can step in and take care of business. Everybody needs to be cross-trained. But the person who's taken responsibility, authority for that job, they're going to be the experts. Nobody's going to do it as well and as fast as that person. There is so much room for leadership that anybody that wants to take on responsibility is welcome to do so. And that's really how it is in the rest of the world. In the Western system, we jockey for leadership because we're afraid that we won't have a say. We're afraid that our ideas and our perspectives will not be listened to, that our values will not be addressed, that our needs will not be met. And so we try to have authority to ensure that we are taken care of. if we're good leaders, then what we'll do is make sure that everybody can communicate. Make sure that everybody has a voice. Everybody's voice is heard. Once their voice is heard, once they felt valued, they have the opportunity to step up and take the lead in bringing about their vision. They can lead people into their visions. If they give you the authority as a leader to carry out their dreams, that's more responsibility on you. The best thing you can do is co-opt them into taking some of that responsibility for their own dreams and for their own hopes. You weave that into your vision, into your dreams. So there's always room for more leaders. In fact, most people don't want to take on that responsibility. They would rather have somebody take care of their dreams and make sure that they come true. In fact, when leadership is no longer the person in control, at that point, it is really about being a servant. Are there any other questions? Do you want to add anything to that, Choog?
No, I think that does it for me.
I talk too much. You can see us. If you guys want me to, I can read through some of these community values, if that's something that's interesting to you. At one time, when everything was based on relationship, people looked at being objective as a good thing, but it was different. So objective now is without personal concerns. It's without your own concerns. It's without concerns for your loved ones. It's what's best for the whole. It's objective. It's outside of any one person. From our ancestors' perspective, objective is a result of community consensus. You may not have everybody's opinion represented. You yourself may not even get your way. However, if everybody is heard, then the decisions that are made take into account everybody's perspective. And that was the concept of objectivity that we were seeking. Sometimes it's difficult to reach consensus. You want to tell them how we reach consensus?
Do we ever really?
Well, tell them about when we do have, not the regular council meetings that we have every month, but the big ones we have in spring and fall.
Oh, goodness. Oh.
Not every community does this, but we do.
So our big community meetings that we have them about twice a year. One's during the spring and the other one's during the fall. Fall is whenever we start to go into our new year. That's our new year is fall. We have a special dance for that. And spring is another one of our special dances where we plant. And that's what all of our seasons revolve around pretty much is our crops. That's how our years go. And we plant in the spring and we have our new year in the fall. But during these two big meetings, we get all of our clans. We pray in the center of all these little overhanging structures, kind of like little outdoor garages.
Made like carports.
Yeah, like carports. The carports. And
they're arbors.
They're arbors. They're called arbors, but I wasn't going to say that. We gather in the middle of all these arbors. There's 7 of them for our 7 individual clans. And we'll pray there for about 10-20 minutes, and we'll all scatter out to our individual clan arbor And there we will start discussing things that we believe we should do within this time period of that council meeting to the next one, and maybe to even a year from that meeting.
Or sometimes years in advance.
Yeah, years in advance. It just, these meetings can go on for hours. And sometimes they don't even go anywhere. They'll just sit there.
Big council session.
Big council session of about 50 people, just sitting there telling each other about how they feel. And at some point, you just say "uncle" and give in. And
well, what are we doing while we're waiting and listening?
We're praying, and we think about what they're saying. We try to get into their headspace. So that's what it really is. It's compromise, but without compromising. But you are compromising. It really comes down to being able to respect others' initiative in the community and seeing if you can help them or not. So you don't really, okay. So, yeah, it's pretty much just, you just try to agree with others and see if you can aid them in their goals in the community. And if not, see if you can find others that can and have people help you with your own. But there's a lot of things that we do during these ceremonies that you have to be in the right mind space. You have to be pure of heart. You have to be clean. You have to be renewed. And there's many different ways that we go about that. We go to water. It's like a self-baptism. We do that in the mornings because that's when it's strongest. The sun first comes up. We fast. We don't eat. Depending on the dance, it could be 7 days before. It could be 4 days before, just the night before on a Friday. They all suck. But at some point, you really start to appreciate them after about day 2. And if you're doing the 7-day, you just don't even think. You don't want to. It's too much energy.
If you can get through 4 days, you can do 7.
Yeah, if you get through 4 days, you can do 7, for sure.
This fasting is to push your spirit, your will above your bodily needs. And you aren't going to die if you fast for a week, as long as you drink water. So by putting your spirit first and your will above your needs, you strengthen your spirit. It's like lifting weights. And we fast during our council meeting. So it really helps to come to consensus, this altered space that you get into, this pure way of thinking. And it's not necessarily the same kind of purity people associate with that sort of thing, but it has to do with being open, being clear, taking the effort to make yourself open and clear, so you can connect to one another, so you can connect to the Creator, to the one that gave us all. And if everybody's out there talking one at a time and everybody is waiting to eat, it makes it a whole lot easier to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and agree with this, because this is not only a good idea, I'm hungry.
And you won't stutter around either. You'll get to the point. If you're talking, you're talking. You're getting it done. Yeah. There's no beating around the bush. You get up there and say what you got to say. That's my favorite thing about it. Is that you say it. You don't try to soften it up for people. You're on a mission, and it's kind of a greedy mission because it's all about you. But you're still going to do it because that's just how it goes.
It seems confusing because we say it's about you, we say it's about them, it's about us. The thing is when you're in that state of mind, you don't see the difference between yourself and others. And that could be really selfish from some perspectives. But what happens is when you realize there's really no difference between you and them. There is no me, there is no you, there is no them. When you're united, that seems to be the best time to make these sort of decisions. One time I asked a group of elders, we had this opportunity and we were talking about our traditional economic statement. So we did research on different types of economies, and Choog just studied this in high school, like socialism and communism, free market economy, all that stuff. And we talked about it with our elders, and then we wanted to come up with the traditional Cherokee economic statement. And they did it in Cherokee first, and then they translated it. And the translation was basically, if somebody asks you for something and you can do it, you give it to them and you expect nothing in return. If somebody asks you for something, you give it and you expect nothing in return. An anthropologist that studied us in the 60s, Robert K. Thomas, he said Cherokees give freely of their time and of their resources. Somebody could be plowing their field, and if they have a guest stop by, they stop what they're doing and they feed them. They take care of them. It seems impractical, but this is how it works. We didn't barter. We didn't say, hey, I like your shirt. If you give me that shirt, I'll give you my shirt. We didn't say that. What we said is, man, I need a shirt. You had to ask. I need a shirt, and it's hard to ask.
Oh, goodness.
So ask me, say you want my shirt, ask me for this shirt.
Can I have your shirt?
I think about it, and I say, okay, do I have other shirts? Yeah, I have other shirts. Can I live without this shirt? I can live without this shirt. Is it really going to make my life hard to live without this shirt? No. Is it going to endanger me or my family? No. Is it going to endanger him and his family if I give it to him? No. I give him his shirt. Now, if I had asked him for your shirt, can I have your shirt?
Yeah.
It's my job now, as the person that asked, to think about something that he's going to want, something of value to me, something of value to him, and I give it back to him. He gives me his time and resources freely. In exchange, I give him something that's of value to me and to him. If somebody went over to that old Cherokee's house and he was plowing his field and he took him and stopped what he was doing and fed him and put him up for the night, the next morning, without asking, they all go out there and finish plowing the field together. That was leadership. It wasn't separate from our day. It wasn't separate from our lives, from our ceremony, from our subsistence. It was how we took care of each other. All right, it's time to wrap things up. We'll send out this document to folks, the PDF version of it, and we'll talk to you guys soon. How do you want to close it out?
I didn't have anything particular in mind. Did you? We already did our song.
Did our song.
We could do another song. We could do the Seven Clans song.
Okay, one time through?
Yeah.
Come on. Kashwogi Juni Gawi Unajeliga Hajilayululehi Anigiduwagi Dunadostan Anigiduwagi Dunadostan Anigiduwagi Dunadostan Kashwogi Juni Gawi Unajeliga Hajilayululehi. Wadong.
Hello.
Thank you guys. Come back. Come back again.